If you're like a Holy Spirit guy like me, maybe you've come across some struggles or challenges that you've encountered because you're just putting it out there that you love Jesus. You want more for people to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit, to have fellowship with Him, to glorify Jesus, to be an empowered disciple of Jesus. But there's a lot of challenges to this because once you start throwing things out there, you start getting called names by some people. The cessationists start showing up. And I understand cessationism. I grew up in cessationism until the Holy Spirit touched my life when I was 17, and then baptized with the Holy Spirit when I was 18. And I've never been the same. That was November 14th of 1998. There's several hours of power and praising Jesus in tongues and weeping and crying, and like a light coming out of my mouth, and the fire and power and electricity of Jesus going through my whole being. It changed me. It empowered me to be doing what I'm doing now. But you'll come across these challenges. You'll come across people calling you a heretic. And what these people don't understand is that even throughout church history, there are historical evidence of people receiving the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Eusebius talked about it. There were even some cult groups like Montanus and stuff, but St. Augustine said that in the early church, during his time, it was expected that new converts would speak in tongues. We see it throughout history in other movements of the Spirit. And we see that not just at the turn of the century, 1906 or 1901, in the 20th century here in America, but throughout church history. Even other countries had movements of the Holy Spirit. So the spiritual gifts are still for today. What cessationists or these exposing ministries or people calling me a heretic or calling you a heretic are trying to say is that the spiritual gifts have ceased, and they're quoting 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter, that when perfection comes, the imperfect will disappear. But it also says we will see face to face. The context of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it's sandwiched in between 1 Corinthians 12 and chapter 14, all about spiritual gifts, prophecy, speaking in tongues, interpreting tongues, among other gifts. But the context of the whole 1 Corinthians and chapter 13 is chapter 1. In the first couple paragraphs, Paul lines it up to say what he's going to be talking about: spiritual gifts. And 1 Corinthians 13 says, these things will cease when we see face to face, when perfection comes. That's either when Jesus comes back or when you or I are received into heaven. So despite the challenges, bless the trolls, pray for them, state your case briefly, move on, and keep doing what it is that you're doing.